Welcome back, Officer Public Recourses Honorable Police Chief APGAINS. Today we're talking about high relics and, to a larger extent, misconceptions that newer players have about how to interact with individual characters, value, a lot of concepts that go over a lot of people's heads. Now, there's a huge difference, and I've long used the analogy of two different chess games. Galaxy of Heroes for a normal person is, well, I guess Galaxy of Heroes for someone who spends a lot of money is chess. The game comes down to the tactics. The tactics are small scale during the fight, which counters you use, specific modding variations, even for the purposes of this video, taking a GL from 7 to 8 or something like that. For the rest of people, it's not a chess game. It's not tactics, it's strategy. It's chess, but you're like Andy Dufresne in prison and you have to carve all of your pieces by hand and no one has the same pieces. It's much more unpredictable, and therefore you need to use much different strategies than you would if you were a player who had everything in the game. For various points in the game, this changes, obviously, if you don't spend a lot of money, but you've been playing for 5 years and you're at 8.5 million GP, and CG let you spend $20 to get 2 GLs and a million GP, which is still one of the funniest things that I've ever heard of. And I'm still, thankful. CG, keep doing that. Give me Sith Eternal Emperor Lightspeed Bundle. I will graciously accept a C for $10. But you don't almost ever need to take characters to higher relics. You notice that all of my GLs, all 5 of my GLs, are at Relic 7. Now, it's not that I couldn't Relic 8 them or Relic 9 them. I might be missing some of this lower level gear. But I most certainly have, the gear or the relic materials to take them to 8 and to take them to 9. And they're undoubtedly better at 8 and 9 than they are at 7. I think that's just a matter of stats. I don't think anyone could really dispute that. It's just a matter of it doesn't really add a ton. Now, there's some cases where, JML will be slightly stronger when he has more protection at 9 because he uses protection, or, it might be nice to have more offense on an SLKR. But for what you're using these characters for in your GACs, it's not really going to be a problem. If you're a free-to-play player and you're, 10, 11 million GP, you might be in a high enough bracket just by pure GP volume that you might need to take, SLKR to Relic 8 and JML to Relic 9. Just by nature of your account is so fucking massive that you're probably playing those top level players. But for 95+% of players who will play this game, you're never really going to be at that point. And therefore, it's important to understand that things like taking a character to a relic that isn't a requirement or isn't, necessarily the most valuable thing, or even things like mods, going too gung-ho on mods, they're not going to give you the return that a lot of people expect them to. And it's not to say that those things aren't important. It's that you need to understand how value in this game works, right? The classic way for many years that I've explained to people how to determine what gear and then what relics and then what mods and all, and what omicrons and what datacrons and all this stuff is, are you getting a material change in the team? Let me think of a classic example. I'm trying to think of one. Things like, I don't have this team, but I'm just going to pull a random example out of my hat that came to mind. Things like bounty hunters back in the day being a really good counter with Fennec Shand to Lord Vader, right? If you have all of the characters at Relic 3, Relic 5, whatever the requirements are, and for me, I don't have Fennec Shand or whatever, you're not going to be able to kill Lord Vader. But in this specific comp for this specific time, mostly prior to Datacrons existing, it was a legitimate counter that worked, and therefore there was a material change when you Relic 8 Fennec Shand or whatever the fuck you had to do relative to whatever your opponent's Lord Vader looked like. Now, I don't know if that example still really works that frequently anymore because of Datacrons and changes and stuff like that, but think of it like that. If I were to, I don't know, if I were to, I'm just gonna make up a counter right now. If I brought my Phasma team, this isn't true, but just play along with me, to Relic 8 or 9, and it allowed me to have a solid counter, Datacrons, not being a problem against Jabba, that's a material change. That's a change that would be worth making. Datacron's kind of made it, and like it's kind of their hope with moving the Datacron thing lower is that they can kind of suck you into that, so that you can have those temporary moments where there's a material change, whether it's a Princess Nisa Datacron or Malicos Datacron or whatever the Datacron cycle of the year is. I don't even know who the I don't know, Kiadamundi, for example. I have a Gear 12 Kiadamundi. This is a solid Datacron. I might actually use it. It would be a material change, let's just say, if I were to bring him to Relic 5 to be able to apply that Datacron. That's largely how that works. But for most teams and for most characters, you're not going to get a material change from that. Taking my JML from 7 to 9 would not unlock any new counters for me that I can't already do. Even something like as non-controversial as SLKR to 8 wouldn't really open anything up that I can't already do. And therefore, if it's not necessary and it doesn't actually mean that you win more than you would, it's by its very nature kind of a waste. Now, as you scale up GAC, like if I was in... I don't play my 3v3 Grand Arenas, right? Because I just think 3v3 is stupid. So I'm largely capped bouncing back and forth between Kyber 3 and Kyber 2, and I have been for quite a while. I actually lost my first GAC of this week. Oh my god, this is going to be a total side tangent, but this is... So my first... Oh, I should probably do that. My first GAC of the week, I lost, and I didn't even know what happened. And I was like, holy shit, what the fuck happened? I lost. So I went into review and be like, oh, did I get full cleared? No, we both got 0 banners. And my opponent just had more GP than me, so he won. I'm sure he found that quite funny. I don't think he gets rewards. My second GAC, I was actually shopping with my girlfriend, and she was getting mad at me. And I was winning. Like, I was going to win. I could have got through his ships. I could have cleared this zone. I could have easily won. But then she got mad at me, so I had to stop playing. And then I was, like, watching the clock in the car, like, count down. And then it hit 2 o'clock, which is when my GAC ends. I'm like, oh, my God. So, if these funny things don't happen and I was in, bottom of Kyber 1, for instance, there might be a point where there is a material change between taking my SLKR from 7 to 8 or my JML from 7 to 9. But for the majority of players, that's not going to happen. For a lot of people, for like 70% of people, it's not going to happen ever. And for the other 25% of people who it might happen to, it's not going to happen for a very long time. So it's not really something that you need to worry about. So I'm just trying to caution you to assess your relic spending wisely, because something that I notice quite frequently is people will go gung-ho on a new team, whether it's I'm just going to use Gas for an example, and they'll take everyone to 7 or 8 or whatever. And then CG will drop a Leviathan, right? And you won't have the Relic 8, Relic 7, Relic 8, Relic 9 materials to get those characters up to get a Leviathan or to get the next GL or whatever it is that requires high relics. And I notice that a lot of people make that mistake. And so I'm trying to teach you as a poor person like APGAINS. If it doesn't make a material change, you don't need to do it. You don't need to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I love you, and I'll see you later. Oh, join the Patreon. Shout out to my 2%ers. I've been incredibly busy. I don't know if you guys have had to work those jobs, but not a lot of time for replying to YouTube comments, but I will eventually. I see you. I read them when I get the notifications because I get a fucking email every single time someone leaves a comment. So I see yours, and I may or may not have time to reply to 200 comments that just say Milk Gang, 2%ers. But if you're there, let me know. And you just know that you'll be in my heart. You might not be in my thumbs as I reply to a million Milk Gangs, but please keep sending them so that I know that you can live on in my heart. Join the Patreon so that I can feed my family. Thank you for watching. As always, I love you, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.